welcome to the Mindset RX podcast, a show for functional athletes who want to gain the champ's mindset. My name is Tom Foxley, and I am founder and head coach of Mindset RX. On today's show, I'm going to be talking all about intensity and hardship and how to push a little bit harder, but also the side of kind of hardship that we need to embrace on a much higher level. So before we get into that though, we have just one thing to cover, which is, actually I'm going to go for two things. Firstly, I'm excited as hell to be starting another Inner Athlete Performance Camp this week. It's just kicked off and we have a group of 12 athletes who are going to crush this, and there's such a variety of athletes that I'm so excited to see how they progress in their mindset. The other thing is, of course, the free Facebook group that Mindset RX runs. It now has a bunch of qualified Mindset RX coaches acting in it, as well as myself. So you have so much expertise there in a place that you won't find elsewhere. So to find that, head over to Facebook and search for Mindset for Functional Athletes and apply for a spot. It's free, of course, but we want to make sure that it's only kind of a quality group of athletes in there, in as much as there's not going to be anyone selling watches in there and that kind of stuff. So head over to Mindset RX on the Facebook page, or you can search Facebook for Mindset for Functional Athletes, and I'll hopefully see you in there. Now, today's show, let's do the hardship piece first, because I think this is kind of, if you understand this principle as a whole, then you'll understand what I'm about to say in the future too, or I'll say it later in this podcast too. So this is through the story of my chili plant. Now, my girlfriend and I got a chili plant for Christmas. We planted it, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. Apparently that's the right time to plant a chili plant, and this is going somewhere, I promise. And it's going really well, considering I am an awful gardener and I will most often kill any plant I try to grow. And we are in a kind of fairly small flat in central London, so it's obviously not optimal size for and like optimal conditions to grow plants in, but I'm looking over and it must be 30 centimeters, so a foot tall, and it's bearing fruit. Now this is really cool, and to get your own chili from a plant is awesome, but there's a lesson in here. Now, to ensure that the chilies to ensure they grow, what you have to do is you have to simulate a bee or an insect kind of flying around and touching between, I can't remember, the stigma and the whatever, basically like the pollen sacs, and move the pollen from the pollen sacs onto the stigma, and kind of like basically you get a paintbrush and just kind of waggle it around in the middle of the plant really gently, and what that does is it disperses the pollen and kind of means that it can pollinate itself, and you kind of move it from flower to flower to flower. So I was doing this, and what I've realized is when the plant is really, really well watered, it doesn't really do that much producing. It doesn't really try that hard to keep itself growing. Like when it's really well watered, when it's had enough light, when it's kind of in the best possible shape, it stays where it is and it's fairly comfortable where it is. Now this is kind of like the opposite to what we think would be the situation. Like when we're thinking about ourselves as athletes, we think, okay, I've got to give myself the optimal conditions, because when I give myself the optimal conditions, that's when I'll grow the quickest. But maybe physically that could be the case, but what we're forgetting there is humans grow under hardship, and this chili plant is exactly the same. When I don't water it enough, which is probably a bit too often, when I don't give it enough sunlight, when I don't turn it round, and when I don't pollinate it straight away, when it isn't looked after perfectly, and when it doesn't have everything that it needs, what happens is the pollen it produces increases ridiculously, because it's trying to strive against the hardship it has. The fruit it produces them quicker, and they ripen quicker, so they're ready to be kind of harvested by me, or obviously in evolutionary time, ready to kind of reproduce quicker. It grows quicker as well. It tries to seek out the light. And I think that's the most apt metaphor here. When I give this chili plant hardship, and for that, it's incidental hardship. It doesn't mean to get into hardship. It's not like it's intentionally seeking out this hardship. When I give this chili plant hardship, what happens is it thrives. And this is exactly the same for you guys as an athlete, as you listening to this. Sometimes what you need is not a perfect environment. Sometimes you need to embrace that hardship and really get uncomfortable. It's that simple. We need to get uncomfortable, and we need to embrace some hardship when we're in it, because that is how the human beings thrive on hardship. And I'm not talking about physically, although you do physically you do physically respond, obviously, to that hardship. You will break down muscle fibers and then regrow them. You will become more, like, your VO2 max will improve through physical mechanisms. But on a psychological layer, on a mindset level, your mind will thrive when you give into that hardship, when you realize you're in hardship and you go towards it and you seek out a tiny bit more every day. That is the way to improve. That's how we thrive as an athlete. So my summarizing thoughts on this is become more like my chili plant. Like, when you do not have the optimal conditions, this is in fact optimal, and we have to go towards that. So become more like my chili plant. The second thing I had to say today was, yesterday I was having coffee and lunch with a CrossFit Games athlete. And it's the kind of CrossFit Games athlete that if you saw, you'd go, oh yeah, I know who that is. So they're notorious within the CrossFit Games community, and specifically as someone who can really outwork their competition. So I've been working with them for the last just over a month or so, and we're working on kind of general mindset, because they understand that if we help their general mindset, they'll be in a better place to excel in competition, to train harder, and also to just live a happier life. That's the summary of what we do here at Mindset RX. So we've been working with this athlete for a while. But anyway, I was having lunch with them, and the topic, after we'd kind of done all the training that I had in mind, and we'd talked through the issues that were going on at the moment and how to correct them, the topic of intensity tolerance came up, and how hard can you push? That's what I call intensity tolerance. And for someone who's written a book on this, I'm still very open to learning. And of course, like, I was speaking to someone who's notorious within the CrossFit Games community, or the CrossFit community, for working hard. So combine that with the imposter syndrome that everyone gets, I was like, oh shit, like this is a like potential turning point. This could be someone that's about to prove me wrong, who I massively respect. So I was having this conversation, and not even thankfully, it's just super reassuring for me personally, but also for all the athletes that I've ever worked with, that the answer to pushing harder is not through force and aggression and this kind of like masculine energy of fight. That is not how we push harder. And from personal experience in the Royal Marines, like, you do not get through 30 miles of running or carrying weight over 8 hours over Dartmoor through that fight mentality. You get in there by chilling the hell out and learning to breathe and disassociating. So what I'm saying is, and like I think the exact words that this athlete used were, everyone thinks my self-talk must be aggressive, but in fact it's very calm. And what happens here is we essentially have this, like, we have the clever part of our brain, the conscious part of our brain, which thinks it's in control. And we think that if this kind of, the conscious part of our brain can grab control of the body, we can force it to do things that we want it to do. But the truth is actually that the subconscious brain is mostly in control. We are directed by subconscious desires on a way that you couldn't even understand possible. Like, your subconscious mind is constantly thinking, okay, I need food, I need water, I need to reproduce. Those are the kind of the main things going on there. And we think that we're in control with the conscious mind. What is actually true is we need to kind of switch the conscious mind off. We need to allow the conscious mind to kind of drift off and do something different, and allow the body to figure it out, because the body is much more intelligent than you give it. I recently learned about this study where with paraplegics, obviously they couldn't walk. what happened is, so they had no control of their body whatsoever from like the neck down. They put them on a treadmill, like hoisted them up, suspended them just slightly above a treadmill, and when their feet got in contact with the treadmill, their body would walk itself. What this means is that there's receptors within the body that can figure stuff out that your conscious mind cannot and your brain cannot. Like, your body is far more in control. And there's a book title called, there's a book which is titled Thinking Body, Dancing Mind. And you don't really need to read the book in order to really get the most from it, or to get the general principle from it. Because the principle is this: when you switch off your mind and allow it to be bright and vibrant and to dance, as it says, the body just takes care of itself. And that body taking care of itself is what we want to do, and that is how you learn to push harder. It's not by forcing yourself with a like aggressive mindset all the time. Like, sometimes that's very, very useful. So like for the last couple of minutes of a WOD, like you can switch it on when your body is craving that ability to just rest. But the real way you learn to push hard is by switching that brain off, being calmer, and basically letting your subconscious mind know that all is good and we don't need to fight right now. We'll just do the work. And that's how you learn to push harder. So the irony is, you push harder by trying less. And that's a very difficult thing for a CrossFitter to learn. So try those two things. Number one, embrace hardship. Number two, when you get to that hardship in a WOD, try less hard to push hard. Allow it to be there. Just sit with it or work with it instead of fighting it. And that is it for today's show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. I think we're on like 66 5-star reviews. It would be amazing if we got to 100 reviews by the time, let's say by the end of the year. And that'd be beautiful if you could do that. So head over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, but mostly thank you for listening. I appreciate you tuning in and spending 13, 14 minutes or whatever listening to this show. So I'll speak to you all very soon.